Do not say you are the one standing for science. Please don't do this to me, Charlie. You have literally advocated for a violation of the First Amendment for prayer to be put in schools again and for religious studies to be taught. You have literally pushed for, like, the educational regression of this country. Get ready, everyone. We're about to hear from Charlie Kirk's channel itself the best argument against critical race theory. We're talking to this guy in like 5 days, so we better be ready to hear the best argument against critical race theory. So just so you guys know, here's the strategy that I have going in, okay? So here are some things that I've learned through some extensive off-stream investigation, okay? First of all, the term critical race theory means absolutely nothing. Not only have people on the right completely abused the meaning of the term to broadly refer to basically anything acknowledging the existence of racism, but there are people on the left who are kind of doing the same thing. If the right uses the term that way, people on the left are going to do the same thing. So they're like, yeah, I support critical race theory. I want to teach about the history of racism. And it's like, that's not what... Basically, yeah. So that's a little bit frustrating. So I'm going to go in there and I'm going to say, nobody seems to know what this term means anymore. Let's talk about specific elements of education you disagree with, okay? Specific elements. If you just say CRT, I don't know what that means. Let's talk about it point by point. Is teaching MLK critical race theory? Okay, what about this quote from MLK where he specifically decries white moderates and says the whites need to educate themselves in order for society and for justice to be restituted? And I have to like this and that and that. Like, point by point. What's critical race theory? What's not critical race theory? Who knows? Let's find out. The other thing that I've learned is that what I would call critical race theory, that is to say, an analytical theory of racial dynamics which frame discourse around the relative power differentials between different racial groups, that is taught in some schools. High schools. Teachers are taught it, for example, in Connecticut, to some extent. They are taught to be fundamentally critical of the underlying racist elements of the schooling system. Now, to me, that's based. Very, very based. So the subject can no longer be critical race theory isn't being taught anywhere. The subject is now, what elements of it do you take issue with? There are going to be some crazy examples I disagree with. A lot of Robin DiAngelo type stuff, a lot of like, hey, elementary school students, let's all do a race and you'll get a delay to the beginning of the race depending on how many privilege points you get. Take a look at the chart of privilege points to learn how many privilege points you have and blah, blah, blah. So there's going to be obvious stuff I disagree with. But the question that I really want to get at is, what's the point we're getting at here? So some objectionable things are being taught in school, sometimes as part of a broad theory that's mostly unobjectionable. And there are schools in the South that have been teaching that the Civil War was fought over states' rights for over a century. But I don't make a moral panic out of it. What is happening that justifies this moral panic, this fear, you know, this obsessive coverage? That's the question. That's the line. So let's find out the best argument, huh?
Derek Bell's critical race theory has decimated the law schools of this nation, it appears. Right. And now we're in a position, I don't know what can be done with the law schools, but if this room were filled with woke students, what would be the secret to their hearts?
You're smart.
Wait, what? Is this like what is this, conference? What is this? I want to know. Where are these people?
So...
It's like a drum set? What is this?
He never says that about me. I'm kidding.
So let me just walk through the question, because I'm sure a lot of you are kind of like, what did you just say? And that's okay. So there's a theory of analyzing the world called critical theory. Okay. It was started by a teacher from the Frankfurt School. The Frankfurt School it was an adjunct of Frankfurt University in Germany. This was during Nazi Germany. They were not pro-Nazi Germany. They were
Hold on. Just want to say, I appreciate that he pointed that out. They were actually despised by Nazi Germany. It was literally like leftist Jewish academics. Okay, all right. I'm just glad he pointed that out, you know?
Position of it, but they were Marxists. They started the Frankfurt School. They ended up becoming expatriates to our country. There's many of them as part of that kind of whole contingent. The most famous and most influential was one by the name of Herbert Marcuse. He started critical theory. Critical theory is nothing more than Marxist ideology, which is usually in economic terms, bourgeoisie versus the proletariat. That's what Marx argued, is that everything would be the working man versus the profiteering business person. Marcuse didn't believe that. He said that really we're nothing more than tribal groups. It's really skin color that matters. So you can have critical theory in law, you can have critical theory.
No. Wow. All right. They're feeling my IQ kerplunking. I'm not an expert on the illustrious writings of how did he pronounce it? Marcuse? He pronounced it silly, I think. Or did he pronounce it well and I've been mispronouncing it my whole life? Yeah, he got pretty close to the truth before he started making shit up. No. So what he's describing here is actually an analytical system which is meant to help us understand how different groups have different interests and how the power dynamics between them can affect the development of history. So, for example, if you were to apply this, that's actually incorrect. Am I incorrect on this? I thought I was correct. Hold on. Let me make sure. I don't really care about the history of this, but if he says anything objectively wrong, it'd be nice to... It's Marcuse? No, it's Marcuse. Thank you. Are there any people in chat more educated on this subject who would like to posit any ideas to me? Marcuse Defense League pullback. Okay, we're just going to wait for the argument.
In science, all that sort of stuff. But he really came down, and the most popular was critical race theory. Before we go any further, every one of your young people is learning this, by the way. If they're in public school, if they're on social media, and most of your Christian curriculum has this, whether you realize it or not.
Christian curriculum?
So critical race theory, started in the 1960s, found a partner by the name of Angela Davis.
Wasn't it founded in the 70s in Harvard Law School or something?
Angela Davis has done more for the destruction of civil society than any person that I can think of in academia. She's a devout communist. She calls herself a communist. She's a member of the Communist Party. Angela Davis and Herbert Marcuse did many events across the country. So what is critical race theory? It's very simple. I'll break it into 5 or 6 attributes. Number 1, melanin is your master.
What? All right. If this is the level of discourse that we're at, I guess, like, what would my response be if he said this to me? I guess I'd say, is that something like teachers are teaching kids that melanin is their master? Is that like a lesson point, like a bullet point they write up on the whiteboard they get to, you know?
Meaning your skin color matters. Now, mind you, this is not...
Wait, what? Wait, hold on. Wait, hold on. Your skin color being your master and your skin color mattering are two very, very different things. Those are two incredibly different things. Hold on. The acknowledgement that race as a sociological construct exists is very, very different than suggesting that racial archetypes are the dominant force in your society.
Not an Enlightenment idea. What built Western society was the Bible, believing that neither slave nor free, Greek or Jew, we are all free in the blood of Jesus Christ, written by Paul in Philippians.
Okay, he's at some kind of religious event. That's why he's playing this up.
This idea, we stewed over it, articulated by Augustine, enhanced by Aquinas, eventually spread thanks to the Protestant Reformation of Calvin.
Yeah,
there was this idea that every life matters. By the way, that's not... We take this so for granted. You realize...
Wait, Christianity invented the idea that every life matters? Okay, all right.
Most of human history has not had what we call common sense. Seriously. So, this idea that every life matters and we shouldn't judge people on the color of your skin. Martin Luther King rightfully built an entire movement trying to say, I don't care about what? The color of your skin, instead about your content of your character.
No, that was actually just one line from one speech. Like that, again, like everything conservatives know is literally the one line from the one speech. He wrote so many essays and had so many speeches on the necessity of combating racism, on how it was not sufficient simply to integrate, but also to tear apart the racist underpinnings of society.
We used to teach our kids this. Now we're doing the opposite.
I should bring like MLK quotes with me, I think.
First thing is melanin is your master. Number two is that racism is everywhere. This is the second thing they teach in critical race theory.
Based.
What does that mean? That there is no institution, no conversation, no company where racism does not exist. The argument of critical race theory is that if you live in the West, it has been...
Nope. Anywhere. No, hold on. I have anyone who says that omnipresent racism is exclusively in the West and not in the rest of the world is not worth listening to. Everyone is born and lives in societies which foster and reflect biases. We're all affected by them to some extent or another, sometimes very minimally, sometimes very severely.
Been built for white supremacists, by white supremacists, and can only...
That's also not true. Racism can be omnipresent without every element in society being built by and for white supremacists. What he's doing right now is he's taking a very defensible position that racism is pretty much everywhere, and then trying to strawman it as a very indefensible position, which is literally everything in society was built by white supremacists for white supremacists. So then they would go like, oh, well, what about welfare? Doesn't that disproportionately help black people? And then it's like that. Like what they're trying to do is Mott and Bailey the conversation.
Only be challenged if you blow up the entire thing. Number three.
That's... What do you mean by blow up? What does that mean? What is with the alliterative language here? You mean fundamentally restructure? Maybe. What do you mean blow up?
They believe that dialogue is evil. They believe that if you have a discussion with somebody you disagree with, you're only validating the incumbent power structure.
Okay. What the fuck does that mean? I have never heard that in my life. Literally, does anyone know of anything at all, that might sound kind of like that? Can I play it back? Yeah, one more time.
Live in the West. It has been challenged if you blow up the entire thing. Number three, they believe that dialogue is evil. They believe that if you have a discussion with somebody you disagree with, you're only validating the incumbent power structure.
What is that? CRT dialogue is evil? Is there like a right-leaning video that I can look at to... I don't see anything. I don't see anything. I'm sorry. He's referencing cancel culture? Ah, I see. So this is what I mean. This is what I mean by like everything you don't like gets rolled into critical race theory. Like, ah, yes. Now, point 5. Okay, point 5 of critical race theory. Reminding your conservative neighbors to change their car's oil when it's long overdue and you know for a fact they haven't done it for a while is evil. Critical race theorists will let their conservative neighbors run their car's oil dry because they think it's evil. What, everything? Critical race theory is when people throw the newspaper at your front door but miss and it hits your window and then it just sits on the windowsill and you don't see it when you go outside, so it just sits there until it gets wet from the rain and you can't bring it in.
They do not believe in dialectic. They do not believe in what Christ brought to the world, which is conversations that need to happen.
Dialectic and dialogue don't mean the same thing. Wait, is he agreeing with the necessity of the dialectical... He doesn't know what he's saying. None of this means anything. Yeah, was Jesus Hegel? That Christ Hegel brought to this world? What is he talking about? Also, Jesus Christ brought dialogue to this world? Again, I know he's in a church, so all the people who are listening to him right now are fucking crazy, but...
Christ was the greatest communicator. He was unafraid to do it. We call him...
Dude, if Christ was the greatest communicator, he would have been able to get out of his fucking crucifixion, okay? You kidding me? If he was really a silver-tongued devil, you seriously think he would have gotten caught by the fuzz? Come on. Come on, get real. He would have talked his way out of that. He would have bribed him. He would have skedaddled. Would have yoinked his way out of the Holy Land. Would have gone up somewhere, you know?
Logos for a reason. You need that kind of dialectic so that you can have civil society.
Okay, again, a dialogue and a dialectic aren't the same thing. I don't know if he really means dialectic, in which case he's saying, okay, nothing.
They don't believe in it. Just read their literature. The fourth thing when it comes to critical race theory is that it's totalitarian in nature. It is not just what you do, it's what you don't do. White silence is violence. You hear that recently? It's not that you're doing something, it's that
first of all, what does that have to do with critical race theory? The idea, wait, hold on. The idea that all a good man, wait, what was it? All a good man need do in times of evil is do nothing? What is it? What's that quote? What's that quote? Come on. All the world needs for evil to persevere is for good men to do nothing, or something like that? That quote is older than critical race theory. This is not critical race theory. This is literally like an ancient bit of wisdom. Like this is something that people have known for thousands of years, that people must act in times of crisis. The same thing that you, Charlie Kirk, believe. Wait, everyone believes this. Yes, people must act in times of crisis. Everyone believes. They just have their own definitions of crisis. How many times? Hey, here's a question. Hey, Charlie Kirk, why are all of Trump's fundraising emails so fucking desperate? Why are all of them? Why do all of them go like, we need you to be a patriot and stand up for America now by giving the Trump administration $25, and if you don't, you've joined the commies. Like, that's the same thing. What they're essentially saying, what Donald Trump's fundraiser emails are essentially saying, is silence is violence, that you are hurting the world by not contributing. The only difference is, in that case, he's demanding money, not just, like, demanding political participation, which might actually be worse.
The fact you exist, it's a problem. If you don't post the black square, you're a bad person.
Who believes this? Wait, the black square thing on Instagram was like some influencers. Was that like a critical race theorist position? Like from the high halls of critical race theory, they were like, yes, everyone must post the black square. I saw people making fun of people who posted the black square. That was like a comedy bit. People were like, wow, this is how you're fighting racism, with the black square? Come on, get real. Like, okay, again, everything is critical race theory.
It's not that if you post the opposite square, you're a bad person. It's if you don't do what they tell you to do, they're going to come after you.
Again,
the fifth thing is this, is they believe science, math, reason, and
Please, God, in a literal church, do not say you are the one standing for science. Please don't do this to me, Charlie. Oh my God, please. Holy shit. You have literally advocated for a violation of the First Amendment for people to, for prayer to be put in schools again, and for religious studies to be taught. You have literally pushed for, like, the educational regression of this country.
empiricism, which was given to us thanks to the Enlightenment, are all instruments of white supremacy. They think that Newtonian physics, force equals mass times acceleration, object at rest will stay at rest, the second law of thermodynamics, inevitable decay, all those things are just excuses to keep white people in power. If you
So I want to ask, like, maybe I can say this, like, maybe I can say this when I'm, like, talking with him. I want the people in the audience to ask themselves if the implausibly stupid thing you've just said really sounds like it could be a mainstream academic theory, that E equals MC squared was invented by Einstein, a Jewish expat, but actually did it to hurt black people. What? What the fuck are you saying? What nonsensical bullshit is this? Newton, not Einstein? Wait, did he say Newton with regards to E equals MC squared? Wait, did he say Newton developed E equals MC squared? Did he? No way.
of white supremacy. They think that Newtonian physics, force equals mass times acceleration, object at rest will stay at rest.
Oh, yeah, he said that, but I was just using E equals MC squared. Because do you think he wouldn't say E equals MC squared is something critical race theorists believe is a tool of white power? Okay, I didn't know if... Anyway, the real position that critical race theorists take is that the veneer of empiricism is something which has often been used to legitimize white supremacy. The easiest examples of this would probably be stuff like eugenics, stuff like phrenology, race sciences, where scientists, and I use this term in the loosest possible sense, would try to find any possible scientific justification they could to legitimize a pre-existing bias. A good example of this would be the bell curve. If you look at the data that's cited in the bell curve, some of it is almost hysterically invalid, where scientists will use sample sizes or sample from populations or just use wrong tests altogether that are so inimical to the nature of the test that their results are irrelevant, essentially. But in spite of the fact that the data in that book is essentially so bad as to have been made up, people on the right still treat it like a legitimate work, and they defend it on the grounds of empiricism. That is the position that critical race theorists tend to take. Critical race theory is all about understanding the biased roots of our structures. And one of our structures is the social conception of rationalism. Does that make sense? Does everyone understand what I'm saying? More importantly, did I say that well enough that people in Tim Pool's audience would understand? Does that make a little bit more sense? No, sorry? Well, probably not. Give Tim Pool's audience too much credit. Yeah, look, can I try to do that again? Can I try that again? Yes, but it has been taken too far in some instances. Sure, but then you don't attack critical race theory. Criticize fringe elements of the academic left that say dumb shit. There's a very big difference there. No, I'm not going to try it again. Let's just continue.
The second law of thermodynamics, inevitable decay, all those things are just excuses to keep white people in power.
So this is nonsensical, by the way. This is not... And by the way, the question would be, is this being taught in our schools? Is this what's being taught in, like, middle school earth sciences? Like, the teacher goes up there and slams her fist down the table and says, all of these charts and figures are white supremacy. Like, do you really think that's happening? Is there evidence of this happening? Is this a problem? What happens if he just replies yes? Then I guess I'd ask for evidence.
You think this is insane, you're right.
Oh.
But every single law school in the country teaches this now, with the exception of a couple.
Yeah.
The law schools teach about the racist underpinnings of scientific theory? Like they're in law school and they're like, yeah, Newtonian physics is racist. What?
Every seminary teaches this. The Southern Baptist Convention has endorsed critical race theory.
I don't know what religion is or means. I don't care.
James Lindsay and Peter Boghossian, two atheists, are speaking out against this because they are Enlightenment atheists who actually believe that science, math, reason, speech, dialogue are important.
Unless when it comes to any of the mainstream scientific conclusions that left-leaning people jump on.
It is. And they are finding now newfound partners on the evangelical right where we actually can agree that God gave us math to make sense of the natural world.
Wait, he agrees with you on that? He's an atheist, but he agrees with you that God gave you sense to math to make sense of the natural world? Like, he's like, yeah, I'm an atheist, but okay, yeah, maybe God gave us arithmetic. What?
Science affirms our faith. We have different ways to view how we use science, but at least we agree it's important. Does all of this start to make sense as to what's driving these people now?
Oh, somebody posted this in chat. This is what I meant by people on the left misusing the term critical race theory. This is the teachers union saying they plan to promote critical race theory in all 50 states. But if you actually take a look at what they're advocating for, like, it wasn't even critical race theory. It was just like anti-racism for the most part, you know? You also have to keep in mind that a lot of stuff that is a part of critical race theory is also just broadly taught outside the purview of that theory, you know? Like, keep in mind, you know what was taught in Nazi Germany? Fervent nationalism. So does Charlie Kirk. But if Charlie Kirk promoted fervent nationalism, and I was like, you're promoting Nazism. That's a component of Nazism, is fervent nationalism. Then I would come off looking rather silly, because it would not, because, you know, it's not how stuff like this works. Race theory, provide an already created in-depth study that critiques empire, white supremacy, anti-blackness, anti-indigeneity, racism, patriarchy, cis-heteropatriarchy. I've talked about this on stream before. This was like super cringe. Charlie's full of shit. The Southern Baptist Convention released an official statement calling CRT, quote, anti-intellectual. When was this article posted? December 3rd, 2020. But the video that we're looking at right now is, October 5th, 2020. So that article came out after this video, I'm afraid. Anyway, I've gone over it on stream before.
They judge you on the color of their skin. They don't believe in dialogue. They don't believe in math, science, or reason. Just look at the Smithsonian Museum.
Yep, I knew it. That's where he's getting all of this from. That one pamphlet in the Smithsonian Museum that I covered mid last year. They always go back to the same points. Remember, I went over that, and it was literally just like a infographic format of an essay written by one person back in the 1980s.
Last month, where they came out with an entire statement funded by your taxpayer dollars, African American Museum, where they said being on time, speaking proper English, having an intact nuclear family, staying married to one person, they're all attributes of whiteness.
Which is, by the way, I mean, if you actually like sit down and think about this for like 5 minutes, most of that pamphlet is super defensible. Like, it's actually really, really easy when you talk about like the cultural influences that white people have prioritized in the stories they've told about what people should or should not be. It's pretty easy to justify. The only reason that I don't approve of that pamphlet is because like conservatives still exist. Like we can't have like 100 IQ discussions on stuff like that when like a third of the country is down there in like the 40s, you know? Down there in the just above freezing range. Didn't I do a segment on that pamphlet? Yes. You know what I mean? Like, we can't, I'll put it this way, okay? We can't have pamphlets like that out for the same reason that kitchen chemical cleaners shouldn't have brand labeling that make them look like fruit drinks, you know? Because, like, most people will be able to realize that they're not about to have a swish of lemonade, but actually, like, lemon cleaner or Windex, you know? But some people won't. And we need to protect those people. Can you explain how being on time is whiteness? Honest question. It's not that being on time, like, makes you white. It's only that our current conceptualization of punctuality is something that's very culturally specific, and it's something that was largely developed, at least in our society, as a cultural juxtaposition to the assumed framework of other groups. Have you ever heard CPT jokes, colored people time? It's an old thing. Obama joked about it. It's an old, long-standing sort of racist trope that black people can't keep the time. And I'll be honest, I don't know where it originates from. I'm sure just goes back some hundreds of years, some racist thing or whatever. But the punctuality wasn't just a desirable characteristic in and of itself. It was a characteristic which was considered a component of being a good white person, a way of distinguishing yourself from non-white people who weren't as punctual. Now, that's not as much the case today. At least, like I don't really think that's how people think of that sort of thing anymore. But does that make sense? Basically, it's not that like being on time is white and therefore bad. It's that the history of punctuality is something which has been racialized against non-white people. Seems like more trouble than it's worth to talk about. I'm not going to talk about it with these guys.
Here's how I can sum it all together. Critical race theory is so unbelievably dangerous, it'll disintegrate this country without us ever realizing it. There's only...
Isn't it crazy how conservatives find a new thing that'll end Western society every 6 months, you know? Like this happens with incredible frequency, and somehow America is still standing. They've been doing this for a pretty long time.
Two ways to govern people. And this is the easiest way you can explain it to a critical race theorist. You can govern people by talking, speaking, and convincing. That's the Aristotelian method. Christ did it better than anyone else. Or you can...
Okay, again, the concept of talking to people to convince them of your positions is neither a Christian nor a Western process. Humans all over the planet have had language for a while. And the oldest and longest standing civilization that is around today, I think, is China. And there were proto-Chinese civilizations that occupied the same landmass before, and they developed civil society before we did. I don't know what we're going on about. Jesus was actually a really good public speaker. I'm a good public speaker. But 2,000 years from now, I don't want people to go, ah, yes, the Vaushian method of discourse, talking to people to convince them of your positions.
You can govern people by force. That's it. You can organize every single government in the history of the planet in one of two buckets. Now, there's more nuance once you get into it. Stalin, force. Mao, force. Mussolini, force. Pol Pot, force. America, speaking and convincing.
America has never used force on the people in this country. America, very known to be very light-handed. You know, we're very, very even-handed with our disagreements.
But what if you think dialogue's not important? Go in that second bucket quickly.
So, like, it's authoritarian. What authoritarian critical race theory laws are, like, popping up around the country? What does that even mean? Inverted causality. I don't need to defend every element of critical race theory. I need to ask, what is happening in our schools that you take issue with, and why does it, like, warrant a moral panic? That's the question. I don't need to... We're not going to talk about an academic theory. Did you just see Charlie Kirk there? Do you think we're going to talk about the nuances of an academic theory? We're going to talk about what's happening in our schools, what's happening around us, and what the big fucking deal is, okay?